In this segment, we'll be discussing legal and illegal intentional grounding. Specifically, we'll talk about the new exception in Federation allowing a passer to throw the ball away in some situations. We'll also talk about how that exception applies to ineligible players being downfield, and we'll also discuss the concept of an eligible player in the area of a forward pass. To legally throw a forward pass, there was always a traditional rule that the passer had to throw the pass into an area occupied by an eligible offensive receiver. Eventually, some modifications were made to the rules. First, the player taking a direct snap was allowed to spike the ball. That was eventually modified to let a player in shotgun take the snap and spike the ball. Now there's a new rule and a further modification. Under the new exception, a passer may legally throw the ball away if the passer has been beyond the lateral boundaries of the free blocking zone and the pass reaches the neutral zone. More information is in the 2022 Football Officiating Manual in the philosophy section, but we'll discuss some more of these things here. When discussing this rule, don't be confused by the use of other terms. A federation uses the language, the lateral boundary of the free blocking zone. But this is similar to the area known as the pocket or the tackle box in other levels of football and what you may hear on TV. Ultimately, we're talking about this shaded spot that's pretty much tackle to tackle. That's the pocket, that's the tackle box, that is the area inside the lateral boundaries of the free blocking zone. So here again are the basic things a passer needs to do to be able to take advantage of the new exception. The passer has to have been beyond the lateral boundary of the free blocking zone, and the pass needs to reach the neutral zone, including the extension beyond the sideline. Keep in mind two other things. The passer may also legally throw the ball incomplete into an area occupied by an eligible receiver without having to reach the neutral zone. That's always an option. And second, this exception is not limited to the player who first receives the snap. Let's talk about the requirement of the passer having been beyond the lateral boundary. Specifically, who is a passer that can take advantage of this exception? Well, first, the passer must actually possess the ball outside the lateral boundary. That means he must possess the ball outside the pocket or the tackle box. You're not going to see that specific language in the rule, but it's implied in the definition of a passer. The rule doesn't say any player may pass the ball. It says a passer outside the boundary may pass the ball. We're bringing this out specifically to avoid the situation where the quarterback fumbles the ball stays right in the middle of the field, and then someone from outside the pocket, a wide receiver or a wing back, comes into the middle of the field, picks the ball up, and standing from right there in the middle just hurls the ball out of bounds. That's not the intent of this rule. The intent of this rule is to give that player in possession who has been forced out of the pocket the ability to legally throw the ball away. Remember that first and foremost, to have the ability to legally throw the ball away under this exception, at some point before the pass, the passer must possess the ball while he is outside the pocket, the tackle box, the lateral boundary of the free blocking zone. This can also be any player. It doesn't need to be the quarterback. The quarterback hands off, pitches, throws a backward pass to another player, or another player recovers a fumble. As long as that player picks up the ball and ends up in possession of the ball outside the lateral boundary zone at some point, he has the ability to take advantage of this exception as well. Remember this too, the player doesn't need to stay outside the lateral boundary. Once he gets outside the pocket with the ball, the lateral boundary disintegrates. That means he may move back in. Why is that important? Well, referees, you're going to see sometimes where quarterbacks scramble. Maybe they move to their left, maybe they move to their right. If they get out of the boundary with the ball in their hand, they've completed the requirement. And even if they move back inside, they can now still take advantage and throw the ball away as long as it reaches the neutral zone. When is a passer outside the boundary? Usually about 3 good normal lateral steps put him out. So referees, if you can just see him take 3 steps to the right or 3 steps to the left, he's outside the lateral boundary. Another way to look at it has to do with our lateral positions. So if a passer moves and reaches the adjacent lateral position to where the snap was, he's outside the boundary. If we're snapping at position 3 and the quarterback runs to position 2 or outside, he's outside the boundary. If he runs to position 4, he's outside the lateral boundary. And if he reaches that point, he can take advantage of this exception. And as a good philosophy, when in doubt, the passer is out. Now let's talk about the requirement that the pass reach the neutral zone. The neutral zone, for purposes of this rule, extends indefinitely beyond the sideline. It's almost like the goal line extended, except now the neutral zone is extended. Line of scrimmage officials, you need to know whether the pass reaches the neutral zone extended at any point and communicate that fact to the referee. Now, if the pass is going to the sideline and something on or outside line prevents the pass from reaching the neutral zone, maybe it hits the chain, maybe someone standing on the sideline knocks it down. If you determine that it would have reached the neutral zone anyway, the pass reached the neutral zone. Also, remember this, it doesn't have to be thrown out of bounds. 9 out of 10 times, that's what will happen in this situation. As the quarterback gets pushed to the sideline, he'll likely throw it out of bounds, but it doesn't need to be. It can land in the field of play. The only requirement is that it reach the neutral zone. And don't be overly technical on reaching the neutral zone. We're not trying to ask you to decide if it got to the neutral zone by 1 inch or just missed a couple of inches. If it's really close to the neutral zone, it's close enough, it's reached the neutral zone. And also remember, if an eligible receiver is in the area, the pass does not need to reach the neutral zone. An eligible receiver in the area is always an out for the passer. There can never be a foul for intentional grounding if the pass is thrown into an area occupied by an eligible receiver, regardless whether the passer is inside or outside the lateral boundary of the free blocking zone. A is a good example of the new rule. At this point, you can see we have a snap from the first hash mark. The quarterback is going to scramble. Seeing no one, he throws a ball downfield into an area obviously not occupied by an eligible receiver. Last year, this was correctly called a foul for intentional grounding. This year, however, the quarterback has met all the parts of the rule. We take another look. Quarterback has done everything he can. He has the ball. He is now outside the lateral boundary in possession and throws the ball beyond the neutral zone. This is all he needs to do to comply with the rule. Referees, this is the position you'll look at. And as you can see, the ball is on the hash mark that was closest to the press box. This is what we would call position 1. Make a note of this as you start, because if he gets to position 2 or takes 3 good lateral steps one way or the other, he's out of the pocket, outside of the lateral boundary of the free blocking zone. And here this quarterback does that. He takes 3 good steps, gets beyond the adjacent lateral position, and throws the ball beyond the neutral zone. So here are a few takeaways for officiating the new grounding exception. For the new throwaway exception, remember the passer must possess the ball outside the lateral boundary at some point before throwing the pass. Once the passer is out, he's always out, and 3 lateral steps will put him outside. The pass must reach the neutral zone or be thrown to an area occupied by an eligible receiver. If all of those happen, then the passer has legally complied with the new exception. For the other passers, our traditional passers who stay inside the lateral boundaries and never get outside, they are held to the old rule. The pass must be thrown to an area occupied by an eligible receiver. And of course, remember that the offense is limited to 1 forward pass. Let's talk briefly about what in the area means for those times when you have a quarterback that needs to throw the ball into an area occupied by an eligible receiver. How close is close enough? There's really no specific distance or yardage or good way to answer that with numbers. It really depends on the situation, but the receiver needs to be reasonably close enough to try to make a play toward the ball, but he doesn't have to necessarily be close enough to touch it. He also doesn't need to try to play the ball, and he doesn't even need to know the ball is there or that it's been thrown or that it's coming. If you have a high pass thrown out of bounds, the pass must be going in the general direction of the receiver, and that receiver needs to be between the numbers and the sideline to say that the ball is somewhat in the area. And no matter what happens, the passer has to have a little air under the ball. He can't just throw the ball straight down at his own feet. Ultimately, this is left to judgment and your reasonable common sense and football sense. The last thing to discuss in this section is how does the new exception affect how we call ineligible players being downfield? If a quarterback or a passer is being pushed outside the pocket and having to throw the ball away, there's a good chance there's a busted play, and there's a good chance some ineligible receivers have gone downfield. So how do we want to officiate this? Well, first, if the passer is throwing the ball, clearly trying to throw it out of bounds, and it lands close to or beyond the sideline and they're ineligibles downfield, we don't want to foul for ineligible players downfield in that situation. The passer is obviously trying to throw the ball out of bounds, so there's really no material effect, no confusion, and it doesn't affect the defense's ability to play the ball. On the other hand, if the pass lands in the field of play and there are ineligibles downfield early, there is a foul for ineligible players downfield. And that's because there is confusion in that case, and the defense could have been lured up into playing a run when it saw the ineligibles and given up an opportunity to make a play on the pass. So again, if the ball is being thrown out of bounds, no foul for IDP. But if the pass lands in the field of play, there could be a foul for IDP.